Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi Christian. I am Ben DeBono, here with my introduction to a 4-video series on fantasy and the academy. The goal of which is to help us all to become smarter and more engaged readers as we enjoy some of the great fantasy series out there. It's kind of a video series in the same vein of my Paradise Lost ones, doing a little bit, more, trying to do a little more than just book reviews, which I know I haven't done a ton of lately. Trying to engage with the Sci-Fi Christian YouTube community in a more thoughtful and intelligent way. These will, I sincerely hope, be a good deal shorter than the Paradise Lost videos, aim for about 10-15 minutes per video. Alright, so here's what we're going to do today. I want to talk a little bit more about what this idea is, why I am doing it, and then tell you a little bit about the 3 series that we are going to be looking at each of the next 3 weeks. Alright, so the reason I'm doing this is both what I already said about, it's a passion of mine to be a more intelligent reader myself, not just a mindless reader, but to encourage other people to do the same. And it occurs to me that, well, there's plenty of dumb fantasy novels out there. There's some that are not, and there's plenty that are not, and there's plenty that are very intelligent, and I think that's wonderful, and I applaud that, and it's absolutely excellent. But what also occurs to me is that there's a problem because there are a great many people out there who are reading these novels that are thematically and intellectually deep, have some very profound things to say in a number of academic and intellectual topics, but they're reading them just for fun, which usually results in reading them at the lowest possible level. Now, you might say, well, that's how I like to read. I just want to shut my brain off and have a good time. I mean, okay, you're free to do that. I'm not sure why you would want to. Shutting your brain off sounds like an awful thing to do, but you're free to do that. But at the same time, it's like, you're wasting so much. It's like going to a fancy restaurant, ordering a really, really good steak, scraping a little bit of juice off the top, and then eating that and throwing the steak away. It's like there's so much more there for you as a fantasy fan to engage with. And my hope with this series is to help me do that, to help you do that, and to help everyone who is going along with me here become a more engaged and intelligent reader. So the other impetus, though, for me has been observing a few different things related to the 3 series that we're going to cover, which, by the way, are Lord of the Rings from Tolkien, Song of Ice and Fire from Martin, and then probably a lesser-known one, The Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson. So the impetus then for doing this, for each of the series, has been feeling a little bit annoyed by different readers of the series, these series that I've been observing in the last few weeks or months or even years in the case of Lord of the Rings. In the case of Lord of the Rings, I mean, anybody who's listened to the podcast, I'm not a fan of the Hobbit movies. They have moments here and there, but I think especially the second one was just really, really awful. I mean, it was like, it made me angry when I came out of there, because it was just like, it took Tolkien and stripped away all of the intelligent, thoughtful, meaningful stuff that we're talking about and turned it into a Michael Bay movie. It was Middle-earth by way of Michael Bay. It turned it into an amusement park ride. It was like watching somebody play a video game. It's not only stupid, it was insulting and offensive to take such a great and deep and intelligent book and do that to it. But whatever. Stuff like that happens. The impetus then for me then with that is reading fan reactions. Some people read the book, some hadn't, but when people like myself would raise these points, why can't you just enjoy it for what it is? And my point here with talking about Lord of the Rings isn't to directly argue that, but to kind of do an end around and say, well, let's think about what it is. What is The Hobbit? What is Tolkien saying with Lord of the Rings? And it's so much more than what Peter Jackson has gotten out of it. And so hopefully by the end of our discussion on Lord of the Rings, or not Lord of the Rings in particular, but Tolkien's work in general, we'll be able to kind of have circled around that argument and be able to say, well, given everything we just talked about, that's why I can't accept it for just what it is. Because what it is wasteful. What it is such an enormously missed opportunity that it's not fun, it's not enjoyable, it's just offensive in its stupidity. Okay. And then the case of Song of Ice and Fire. I clicked on a video a few weeks ago, and I don't remember the link to it, which is fine because it doesn't deserve any more views than it's already gotten. But it was somebody who, I think the video advertised itself as, why doesn't George R. R. Martin write faster? Which, whatever. Everybody's has their own opinion on that. I don't care what your opinion is on his writing speed. I don't care what my opinion is on his writing speed. But I started watching this video, and I'm not quite sure why, because I've heard all those arguments, but for whatever reason I clicked on it. And the person actually, their argument really drove me up a tree. I mean, I get a lot of the frustration over Martin's writing speed, but that wasn't what he was saying. What he said in this video is that early on in book 1, we all figured out that what's coming is a big clash between the White Walkers, the ice zombies, as he incorrectly called them in the video, and the dragons. And Martin just needs to skip all the other stuff in the middle and get to the big fight. And I turned it off at that point because I was so annoyed. But it's like, wait a second. You don't understand what you're reading. Because if you think all this is spinning our wheels until we can get to Game of Thrones by way of Michael Bay, then you're a moron who has failed to understand the subtleties, complexities, and intelligence of this series. And that's like, we have to do better than that. We have to do better. Fantasy series are not just about, let's see cool creatures fight. No, it's about having meaningful things to say, and Martin has had a enormously plethora of meaningful things to say along the way in his series. Whether or not you think he should write faster, whether or not you think the books are too long, he is an intelligent author. All right. And the third one, the Mollison Book of the Fallen, is, I'm annoyed with myself in this case, lest you think I'm just lashing out at other people. Mollison Book of the Fallen is, it makes Song of Ice and Fire seems straightforward and relatively simple by comparison. I mean, there's just tons of characters, tons. And it's a book I tried to read. I've tried to read another book. It's a series. It's a 10-book series. It is complete, which is nice. But I've tried to read it a couple times, and I've wound up giving up because, at various points, not because it's a bad series, but because I didn't have the time to devote to the complexity of it. And I'm annoyed with myself about that because it's actually a very intelligent series. I do have complaints about it. I don't like it as much as the other two, but it deserves to be in this conversation of intelligent fantasy series that are worth your time because of what they have to say. So I'm listening to it now in audiobook, really enjoying it, and we'll talk about that more. But it deserves more effort than I gave it the previous time. So I am annoyed at myself in that case. So I'm just annoyed at everyone here. I'm annoyed at me. I'm probably annoyed at you. I'm probably, I'm annoyed at all these stupid videos and reactions to the Hobbit series. And we got to do something about it. Hence this series. All right. So in the case of Tolkien, as we look at his works, I want to focus on his academic interests, philology, how his study of language informs the foundation of Middle-earth, how everything in Middle-earth is built upon language, his study of mythology, which really kind of pulls the project together as a whole, and I'm talking about the overall Middle-earth project, meaning the Silmarillion, his unfinished works, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, the whole 9 yards. And then also his sacramental worldview. And I think that those three, which of course he's not formally educated in the way that he was a philologist and studied mythology and everything. But as a devout Catholic, and something that he admits permeates the worldview of his entire stories, it's essential for understanding Tolkien. Right, in the case of Martin, his formal academic training is not in the areas that you see prominently used in his series as far as academic and intelligent interests. He's trained as a journalist. He has his BA and MA in journalism. But the series shows, if you read it carefully, it shows such a wonderful grasp of history, of medieval history, I should say. It shows a wonderful grasp of bringing that to life and helping us to better understand medieval history, as well as literary criticism, at least within the fantasy genre, post-Tolkien, and what was I going to say? And then also gender issues, I think. And that's something that's been very misunderstood in this series. Now, I've talked about some of those in my reviews of the Game of Thrones books, but we'll talk about them slightly differently and maybe pull together some of that without talking, so much doing reviews and of all the individual novels. So a little bit of overlap, but I think it'll be good to kind of bring together those parts of the conversation in the Martin video. And then finally, Stephen Erickson has formal training in both archaeology and anthropology, and he shows a very erudite knowledge of sociology as well. And what's interesting about Erickson's work is that it is a non-Tolkien fantasy. His influence there is not Tolkien. And so it's very interesting as a fantasy novel from that perspective. But it's also interesting in the way that where Martin writes with such a strong sense of history, and that permeates his world and pulls it together. Erickson doesn't. There's a lot of anachronistic moments in his that kind of take you out of the prototypical fantasy world. I forget what it was I was listening to last night, but he used some idiomatic expression that just, doesn't fit at all with kind of the medieval style world of fantasy novels. But his understanding of anthropology, of culture, of sociology, of archaeology are the things that pull his world together in spite of those anachronistic elements and really make it a brilliant series worth your time and worth the admittedly massive effort it takes to get through it and understand it. All right, so that's where we're going to be going. We're going to start Tolkien next week, and I think this should be a fun series. But that's all I got for you for now. So let me know what you think. Let me know if there's other series you think would be good to cover in this. But those are the three we are going to do, at least for the time being. So, I am Benny Bono, and this is the Sci-Fi Christian. Goodbye.